Hello and welcome to JJ's Teaching Corner. My name is Jasmine. Today I'll be doing the How I Became a Teacher tag, which is a bit of a get to know me video, talking about how I became a teacher, as this is in the name, and the route that I took. Just a little bit more about me, so get to know me and thinking about some of the different routes into teaching as well. I'll come to that later on in the video. This tag was inspired by Too Cool for Middle School, which is a really great YouTube channel that I would recommend. I'll leave a link to that in this video. She's a really great teacher based in America who I follow on Instagram and on YouTube, and was really helpful for me last year, especially when I was in my very first year of teaching, and still now along with other teachers. So I thought I'd do my own version of this. I've changed some of the questions a little bit because they're not so applicable to the UK, because Too Cool for Middle School is based in the US, so not all of the questions quite fit the UK, so I've tweaked some of them, but I hope I'll be able to answer most of them and help you to get to know me a little bit more, and hopefully some of the information in my video might be helpful to you as well if you are thinking of becoming a teacher or about to start your teacher training, or just have an interest in teaching on the whole. So we'll start with the very first question, which is, did you always know that you were going to become a teacher? Forgive me for looking down, I'm just looking at the notes so that I don't forget what it is that I'm saying. So did I always know that I was going to become a teacher? I didn't actually. I have changed my mind a lot over the years about what I want to do, from when I was a small child to even up until a couple of years ago, always changing my mind about what it is that I wanted to really focus on for my career. When I was small, I did say at different points in my life that I wanted to become a teacher. I actually found a book from when I was in primary school. I must have been in the early years, year 1 or year 2 or something, where I'd actually written that in the future I would be a teacher. So I knew it was something that would eventually happen, but that was when I was a very small child, and my mind changed a lot over the years. So when I was doing my A-levels, I studied French, art at AS, and I'll tell you what happened with that in a moment, maths and sociology. So those are the 4 subjects that I did at A-level. I actually was really passionate about art for a very long time. I mean, still to this day, I love doing art. I love creating things, and I think that creativity has transferred into my teaching quite a lot, which is really great. But when I was in year 12, I actually thought I was going to go and do graphics and do graphic design, because I loved creating digital art. I loved creating just different forms of art that I didn't actually get the chance to do a lot in school. I didn't do so well though in my art A level. In my AS, I got a D grade at AS level. So that quickly put an end to that dream. I wasn't going to become a graphic designer, I wasn't going to be a professional artist, and that got put to the side. But I realised actually how much I loved sociology, and it was a subject that I'd done already at GCSE, so I was confident in my ability with it. I did really well with my GCSE, I did really well with my A level. So that was what I went on to do eventually at university. But even then at university, I thought that I was going to become involved in politics in some way. I thought that I was going to go and possibly work for the government in some way, doing the civil service. I actually did the civil service test in my 2nd year to do a summer school program with that. That didn't work out for me in the end, but I still really wanted to go into politics. I still really wanted to be involved in research or advising ministers and different works like that. So I thought that that was what I was going to do, and out of university, that is what I applied for first of all. And again, for different reasons, that didn't work out. And personally, I think that was God telling me, this isn't for you right now, maybe in the future, but He closed that door for me then. And then I went down another route instead. So in my 3rd year, I applied for a program where you go into schools and you volunteer for a whole year as a learning mentor. So I went and did that. I'll speak a little bit more about that program in a little bit. So I worked in a school the year after I graduated from university, and I loved it. It was one of the hardest years. I think everything I've done, I always say it's the hardest thing I've done so far, so everything gets harder but in a good way. It becomes more challenging. So it was a tough year working in a school. I worked in an all-boys school, so it wasn't easy. So I was thrown into the deep end with it. But I figured that this is something that I really enjoy. I love working in the kind of educational zone. I love working with young people, and I love being able to put my knowledge out there and to help other people, to equip young people with the knowledge and the skills that they would need to succeed. And if I could do that with them, then that was great. That was all I wanted. I wanted to be able to help other people, and teaching just fell into place with that. It just made sense. So that was a very long-winded way to say that I didn't always think I was going to become a teacher at all, but things just fell into place. I believe that it was God just lining things up for me to put me into the position that I am in today. So question 2 leads nicely on from the first question, and it's, what did I study at university? So I studied a course called Human, Social, Political Sciences. It was a fairly new course at the time at the University of Cambridge. It's a really cool course actually, because it gives you a range of different topics that you can choose to study. So it includes sociology, it includes politics, international relations, social anthropology. At the time it included archaeology. They have since, I think, split that because they realized that the combination into one course didn't quite fit, but you can still choose from different papers. So in the future I might do a video about what I studied at university, the experience of studying HSBS at Cambridge. But I chose to specialise in sociology. So in my second year, that was what all of my papers were based in, just sociology. I studied gender differences in education, which I loved. I think that was one of my favourite things that I did in my second year, along with a paper on race. So those two things I fell in love with. And then in my third year I borrowed a paper from the education department, so that was really cool. I could mix my sociology knowledge with education, which was a course on its own, but the two very much go hand in hand, sociology and education. So I did that paper, and again it was one of my favourite papers of that year, looking at policy. I'm a bit of a policy nerd. So looking at educational policy, looking at differences in achievement, a lot of looking at class. So my interests all came together in one. I loved talking about class, I loved talking about gender, and I loved talking about race and the sociology of those things. So in my third year all of those things came together, and that is part of what inspired me to become a teacher as well. So even though up until that point I still thought I was going to go straight into politics, I still thought I was going to go straight into looking at educational research perhaps, those different interests that I had led me really well into teaching, because I was able to actually put those bits of knowledge to work in a practical sense. I could think about class differences in education and what teachers can do to try to offset that. I could think about gender and race differences in education, and again, you're going into the field as a teacher, working with young people, working with schools, working with advisors, working with all sorts of people in the education sector to try to balance those differences out. So at the moment there's a lot of talk about the ways that different students might be disadvantaged as a result of not being able to sit their final exams. So all of the learning that I did at university is so relevant now in my actual teaching, and I'm having to think about what I learned then, what I'm still continuing to learn now as a professional, and putting that into action, making sure that I and teachers around the country are making the exam process as fair as possible. So everything that I studied at university, I didn't know it at the time, but it led so perfectly into everything that I am doing now. So just to circle back to what I did after university as well, the program that I worked on was called City Year. So you might have heard of City Year before. It's a program that is run in the UK, in the US, in South Africa. Those are the 3 countries that I know of. It might be in more, but I'm not sure. And the whole point of the program is that it takes young people aged between 18 to 25 years old, and it puts them in schools where students typically face more disadvantage than in other schools, than in other areas. So you work with a small group of students and you become a mentor to these young people. It's kind of like being a teaching assistant, but with different things involved in it. So I would be in lessons with them as a teaching assistant would be, helping them to make sure that they were getting on with different parts of their work in a way that was accessible to them. I did meetings with them after school, checking in, mentoring them, really trying to push them and make sure that they were getting the most out of their school day as they could. I helped run extracurricular events, all different things that gave me such a well-rounded view of how the school system worked, that put me in such a good position to then be able to go and apply for my teacher training and get into teaching. I think even though at the time I was struggling because it's not a paid position, it's purely voluntary and you get a stipend just to look after the basics and to look after travel. So that was really tough for me, but I look back on that year with so much gratitude now that I had the opportunity, because without it, my first teaching year would have been so difficult, because I wouldn't have understood what it truly meant to work in a school. Not to say that without doing anything like that you can't become a teacher. Obviously there are so many ways that you can gain that experience by going and volunteering as maybe a tutor, doing other different youth programs, just doing anything to work with young people. So yeah, if I had one piece of advice, if you are still in university now and you are thinking of becoming a teacher in the future, see if there are any opportunities that your university itself might offer to let you go into schools. I know that Cambridge did have a program where you could go into schools and work with young people, but also the different skills and the knowledge that you will learn at university will come in handy later on. Whether you know it or not, you might not even be thinking of becoming a teacher, but the things that you're learning at university level will be relevant later on. So nothing is a wasted opportunity. You can gain experience from anything and everything around you. Okay, so the next question is, what requirements does your state in the US or your government require for teachers? I will come back to this question later on in the video, because I want to talk a little bit more about the different routes into teaching. So I will put a timestamp for when I talk about that, just so it doesn't take too much time here. So moving on to the fourth question. How did you decide what you wanted to teach, i.e. what age group and what subject? So I am quite an energetic person. I am quite a bubbly person, and lots of people who meet me think straight away that I am a primary school teacher, and that could never be me. I have amazing friends who are primary school teachers and they do such a wonderful job, and when I speak to them I find myself asking them all the time, how do you have the energy for it? Because it is a different kind of world to teaching in a secondary school. So for me, primary school teaching isn't quite suited to my skill set, it's not suited to what I know. Whereas secondary school definitely is, especially teaching GCSE and A-level students. I find that I'm able to build much stronger connections with that age group of students because of what my interests are. So that's how I knew what age group I wanted to teach. And subject, I love sociology so much because it is something different to what I knew from other subjects. I started studying sociology in year 10, and what initially got me interested in it was human geography. So I hated any kind of physical geography. I don't want to learn about lakes and rivers. Those of you who do teach geography or love geography, more power to you, because it is such an important subject, but it's not for me. So I really fell in love with the human side of geography, thinking about globalization, thinking about global poverty, thinking about even within a country the different kinds of classifications that people fit into when it comes to class, when it comes to work, all different types of ways that we think about society and what it means to belong to a social kind of group. And that struck a chord with me, and when I realized that sociology is about that in a deeper way, I knew that that was what I wanted to do. Well, as I said before, I thought I was going to go off and become an artist. When that got kind of put to the side, I realized actually it was sociology that stood out above any other subject, because I was thinking about things in a way that I had never been able to before. I was thinking about the way that your family has such an impact on you, and the way that you interact with the world around you, the way that education has such a powerful role to play in the shaping of a person's life, the ways that your gender, your ethnicity, your beliefs, anything about your identity is so interesting to me in a way that is different to psychology. Psychology is much more scientific, and my brain just does not connect with psychology in the same way that it does with sociology. I love to be able to look at things from a less scientific approach and really get to grips with the ways that people work with other people, looking at things like social inequality, social justice. All of those different loves that I have come from my love of sociology. And then going back further, I was raised in a household where sociology was actually something that was a very integral part of my childhood and my life, without even knowing that it was. Both my parents are very politically minded people, and they raised my brother and I with a love of changing the world, with understanding the way that things are, with wanting to see differences made in the world, with wanting to see class inequality eventually gotten rid of, with wanting to see racial inequality done away with. They raised us to be so socially aware that it was something that I had planted in me from a really young age. So I think it all boils down to really a love of social justice and seeking social justice, which very much for me, again, is an integral part of my faith as well. So everything kind of comes together, leads me to sociology. And then if I'm working with young people, I want them to understand these things too. I want them to be critical of the world around them, to think about the ways that things have been in history and the things that we can do to change them in the future. So again, this is a critical time for my students, and I'm discussing it with them, thinking about all of the different kind of areas of change that are being revealed in this crisis, and how what we've studied, differences in education, the criminal justice system, healthcare inequality, housing inequality, all of those different things, in-work poverty, all of those different things that they have studied from a textbook don't just stay in the textbook. They need to take them into the careers that they might go into in the future to make that difference. So I teach sociology as a subject because I want to enable other young people to go out into the world and to be active change makers, and this is one way that I can do that. The fifth question is, did I substitute teach before I actually became a teacher? I didn't. I graduated from my undergraduate degree. I did city year for the year, and then I went straight into my PGCE year. And I did that because I felt that I'd had enough experience with city year to be able to go back into the schools and put everything that I'd gained from that year into practice. I didn't want to substitute teach because I didn't think it was necessary. But I know that it is a really great way for people to get into schools. If they haven't had other experience, you can do some substitute teaching without having a actual teaching degree, just to help and to see what it is that teaching involves and whether or not that's something that you want to do. The next couple of questions, I am going to say what they are now, but I'm actually going to answer them in a different video, otherwise this video would become far too long and probably quite boring. There's just information overload. So those questions are, what was the process like to apply for the first teaching job that you had? What were your interview questions? What was your first teaching position? And what did you feel prepared for or unprepared for on the first day of the job? So I will do a whole separate video talking about applying for your first job after doing your teacher training and what my experience was like. Hello, so I'm editing this video at the moment, and I've actually seen that this is quite a long one and it can be split into two parts. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to end this video here, and then the next part I will upload soon, which is a lot more information about all of the different routes into teaching and why I chose the PGCE and why I chose to do it at the Institute of Education. So please stay tuned for that video, which will be coming shortly. But until then, I hope you have enjoyed this get to know me, why I became a teacher, why I love sociology so much video, and I will see you soon. Please do leave a comment down below though for what you would like to see in a future video. Like this video if it is anything in there that you have found helpful at all, and subscribe to the channel for what is coming soon. Okay, bye.